Hello, and welcome to Dark Paradigm Games' first game development podcast. I am Edwin Dizer, the community manager of Dark Paradigm Games. I also do the sounds, and I'm here today with...
Hello, I'm Jacky. I'm the creative director of Dark Paradigm Games, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're here today making a series of podcasts on important game development topics that we think will be useful for you. We've learned quite a lot from starting up an indie game development studio, so stay tuned for the whole series to learn from our successes and mistakes. Today, we're going to be talking about presskits, why we think they're useful, why you need them really, how to make one, who to send them to, and a few other tips and tricks. So, first of all, what is a presskit? Over to you, Jacky.
Thank you so much. So, what is a presskit and why do you need it maybe? So a presskit is like a promotional resource basically for your team or for your business. And you want it to communicate important facts to journalists, just to get yourself some positive and focused press for your business or, well, for your game if you're developing a game like us. And the primary audience of your press kit should be journalists and maybe media agencies.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, the person you're writing the press kit for is actually really important in determining, well, how you write a press kit. So we've both been researching the topic a bit, but some information I've come across quite a lot is actually journalists really don't have much time, and you're mainly aiming this for journalists. So even though we're going to talk you through making the whole thing, actually they may just be looking for a few sentences within your press kit that just say, exactly what your game is and does it fit that journalist's audience.
Yeah, I think it's really a good point you're making. It's like, how should your press kit be written, for example? You really want to make the life of journalists the easiest it can be by just maybe also analyzing whoever you're sending the press kit to, how their writing style is. So that, for example, our topic would be game development. So we would want to look up, for example, a few game outlets and see how is their writing style. Is there like a predominant writing style that we can cater our press kit already to? But I think that's maybe already going a little too far in terms of what is a press kit. So maybe let's get back to this for a second and just go over what it typically is.
Yeah, so a press kit is not a press release. The press release is really where you just tell as many people as possible in some ways that your game is coming out. That's the bottom line. And we're not really trying to talk about a press release today. Jacky's already defined what a press kit is quite nicely today. I'd consider this a kind of more personal thing. This is you requesting journalists to talk about your game rather than just putting the information straight out there into the internet, into the ether. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. And also, like the typical press kit is probably just around a one-page document, and that's containing your contact details and, well, you promoting events or products or promotions or whatnot. It all depends a little on what the purpose of your press kit is, if it is for a product or if it is for your company. And maybe this leads to the next big question: why is a press kit important? And for what do you need a press kit?
Yeah, so from our perspective of game development, today and we're going to talk about marketing some other time. That's not really the focus of this podcast. But today it is very difficult to get noticed. I'm sure any indie developers listening can empathize with that. Now, one of the main people who can get you noticed are journalists. Journalists, people who write articles, reviewers, sometimes just that slightly nebulous term influencer. What your press kit is trying to do is say, please notice me and please
Help.
share my game or whatever I'm making. It doesn't have to be a game, obviously, but just whatever I'm doing, please just write an article about it, send it to your audience. It is a really crucial part of game development.
Okay, yeah, because exactly the easier you make your press kit and the more accessible you make it for journalists, the more likely you will have free publicity that can again result in more customers, or in terms of gaming, result in more downloads for your game. And that is what it all like boils down to in the end, at least in my opinion, that you want to really nail down what your purpose is for your press kit. Is it to introduce your new business or your new product or a service you're providing, or is it just to let people know how they can reach you? There are like so many different things you could technically use it, but I think a press kit is mostly for more static information that's not changing so much as in comparison to a press release.
Yeah, I would also say, going back to that idea of having a niche, the audience, if somebody subscribes to a journalist or somebody writes an article or they follow them, the audience of that person are typically going to pay attention to what they're saying, and there'll be an element of trust between that journalist, article writer, influencer, and their audience.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of influence is really difficult to get for yourself. So this is why we're sending out press kits to these types of people. They already have an audience there. They trust what they're saying. The best case scenario is they have a lot of good stuff to say about your product. And that should really help you get some traction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about that focused, focus and positive press that you want to get. But what's also interesting is when to make a press kit. Maybe you can answer that too.
Well, actually, I was thinking about this, and it's not really a very conventional answer. But in my opinion, it's actually quite a useful process to go through trying to make a press kit for your product straight away, before you've even started making that product properly. It's really going to help you focus what it is, how you're going to market it, all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, like I promised, you can also learn from our mistakes. It's generally recommended you start making a press kit sometime around an alpha launch of your game or of your product. So it's not, the nuts and bolts are there. You know what it is. Maybe you're beginning to develop a bit of an audience. You can start developing a press kit then. And there's a sort of bit of flexibility here. It would be somewhere between the alpha launch and a beta launch, which is really, for a beta, you have an almost finished product that you really just want to polish off. And between those periods, a press kit's quite useful. There's advantages to either. So the earlier you go, the less content you may be able to show off to a journalist. The later you go, the more content there is. You'll be selling a more polished product. However, the later you do it, the less, well, it might be too late. You might not quite get enough traction in time. It's nice to have an audience for your product, your game, as early as possible as well. So there's pluses and minuses. What do you reckon about that, Jacky?
Yeah, definitely. I think you want to build that hype for your game before you release the game, and ideally as soon as possible, because it's so much harder to generate hype when the game's already released, because then people are like, the game's already released for 1 year, but I didn't hear about it, so it cannot be that good. So you really want to get that hype, and to do that you're really in need of having, ideally a PR list where you have some journalists that you can send your press kit to. And if you don't have a press kit, then your chances of being covered by the journalists you're writing an email to is very, very low if you don't pay them. And chronically, a lot of game or indie game developers don't have all that much money, so they're kind of banking on that free press. And that's kind of where you try to have a really good press kit, just to get people, or journalists in this case, to write about you without you having to pay them. And then we come already to the point, like, what should be inside of your press kit? Because if you want to cater to journalists, what do you need?
Yeah, and actually, the good news is this bit is fairly straightforward. Difficult to do well, but fairly straightforward. A press kit basically describes your game. That's the essentials.
Yeah, I think we can agree you first need an introduction, or basically even the name of your business, or like or the name of your game. I think that's super important. It should not be neglected.
So earlier I was saying these journalists don't have much time. So something that you will see in any press kit is just a fact sheet. That's got your contact details, a release date, what platforms it's for, is it free to play, or how much is it going to cost? Studio's name, I forgot to mention that one. That's pretty important.
Yeah,
Make sure you put your studio's name in.
Yeah. Cannot underline how important it is. Put your name there. Yeah, also the link to your website, and maybe even the team's biography, if they are like interesting, and like underlining what, or the cause, or how they chime in, or what's their purpose in this production. It's also pretty interesting to journalists. Also in terms of interviews or videos, where your team was in connection together with your product somehow.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, as a team, Dark Paradigm Games is relatively new. We haven't got any officially released games yet. We're going through this process with our first game to be released, which is Legion's Masters. That said, actually, all of our teammates have some quite good experience in the industry already. So I was just thinking, in this biography section, you might want to upsell your team members if it implies your studio is making a good product. However, the studio itself, well, we don't actually have that much to say about it yet, to be honest. We don't have released games.
That will hopefully change soon, but I totally agree, because in a good press kit, you could definitely put like biographies of your CEOs or the founders, and preferably with, for example, good headshots and just things journalists can pull from and use, and like just write a really good article about it. Because from the perspective of a journalist, what do they need? What do they want? They want to probably write a really good article, or something that will give them attention or benefit them somehow. And the more good information you can give them, the better for you and the better for them. So you're basically helping each other in that kind of context. And you can put so much in your press kit.
That said, be concise. All the relevant information, but nothing more.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely put stuff like music snippets from your in-game sound, for example, for YouTube coverage, or artwork. And what you should include definitely is downloadable logos in high resolution, and maybe even a branding guideline for how and where to use these logos, so that the journalists also know what you kind of want to give you the best possible press you can have. And again, depending on the company, you want to put general information or details about specific events, products, or service you're offering. And in our case, in game development, you also want maybe to add statistics, like how many downloads you have in the Google Play Store, or where the games were released, which you already said, for example, on Steam or so on. And if you're not a game development company, also maybe your clients, like who you have worked with, testimonials, and just the type and number of products you really have. Let's, for example, say we would have like 5 games released with Dark Paradigm Games. Then we would definitely want to list these 5 games in the press kit of our company, and then have these 5 games linked to an individual press kit each time we are maybe even having a major update or so.
Yeah, the point about your logo and images is a really important one. Bear in mind, I know we've made the point hundreds of times, but this is not for the everyday consumer. This is for journalists. And obviously, every journalist's website, or maybe even you're aiming for printed publications, I don't know, they all follow a different format. To use a crude example, one journalist's website might have a black background. One journalist's website might have a white background. So make sure, even with every image you include, it will look good depending on the background. You might want to include your logo, for example, with a white background, and the same logo but with a black background. So it works in a variety of situations.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's why the guideline for branding is so important to provide with these logos, and just to make clear, hey, this logo goes on a black background on a website and this logo on a white. And you can list so much in your Presskit, but I think it's really important to also have it clean and easy to read. And maybe there are just some things to note when making a Presskit.
So I've seen a lot of Presskits while researching this that quite simply they have a fact sheet, titled fact sheet, on the left. You can see that immediately. So that's just a left column, and very clear headers. I would suggest as individual headers, you do something like this. You just go description, so describe your game or product, a history of your game. Journalists love stories.
Yeah.
That is ultimately what they make. They make stories. So turn this into a story, make it engaging. A lot of people have said in their experience of making Presskits, a lot of journalists actually just copy and paste content from their Presskit. So this has to be press ready or ready for an article. It has to be interesting to read. It has to be a story. So you can give a history of your game under the description, which can be a bit more plain, a bit more factual. The history of your game is like, that's the article bit. Then I've seen a lot of Presskits that now list features. That's just like bullet points, selling points of your game, without trying to make too much of a hard sell, but just list the facts. Why is your game good, basically? Next up, loads of videos and images, which Jacky's already talked about. And really, the more the merrier, to be honest. Without, like, a journalist probably doesn't have time to use 200. But then again, I've heard some people recommend you put in a zip folder of just a huge amount of assets that you're happy with a journalist using if they want to be a bit more detailed.
Yeah, basically highlight your business with photos, with videos, with music, anything that can really help you, that you're able to give away, that's maybe not hidden behind NDAs or something. And you also definitely want to have a strong call to action in your Presskit. Like, make it clear how these media pros can contact you, for example, with a contact me button or something. And you can also try to anticipate questions, like add a frequently asked questions panel in your Presskit.
One thing I haven't seen much, which I'm curious about, is a lot of Presskits do not offer that the journalist can actually talk to you.
I've seen it in some Presskits, but not in an awful lot of Presskits, and some even offer like, put your email in here and then we'll write you back with the latest coverage where you maybe appeared in already released articles in like normal press, not the digital.
I think it's nice. It's nice to have that option. It shows it just feels less one-sided. Anyway, that's my opinion. I have to say it's an opinion because I just don't see that much in Presskits, but maybe it would be a nice thing to see.
Yeah, I agree. I also maybe it's more like a secret thing I just found, but I thought it was like, it indeed makes it feel less one-sided, because like, what are the best ways to distribute Presskits at the end of the day? I think it's right now mostly digital, and so email, like, put it in a PDF or put it on your website. I think that's the most common thing. Less common is maybe to print it out nowadays and actually send it to the journalists. That feels a little old. But what I've also read when I was researching this topic was that people sometimes bring their Presskit on a USB stick and bring it to networking events, and I find that it's like it kind of feels weird to me, but yeah, maybe it does work.
I think that sounds pretty good, actually, because if you're handing it to somebody on a USB, you can then actually talk to them and present yourself as a human being who happens to have a USB handy.
Another cool idea I had while I thought, sorry, because another cool idea.
Go on. I love cool ideas.
Yeah, but another cool idea I thought was to have it inside of your game. Like, for example, we are developing a game. We could probably squeeze in somewhere a small press kit about the game. So if a journalist plays the game, they can already access it. But yeah,
that's quite cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
Sometimes
I think that's a really
I
nice
have
idea.
my moments.
Let's do that. Yeah, we'll get our coder onto it. Poor Jeremy.
Yeah.
Just a few other things that we haven't mentioned yet. They're pretty self-explanatory. You should probably include articles, reviews, feedback, like good reviews about your game somewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. Also the credits, like who made the game. If saying this is not your company, Presskit, but if you made the game, like who's in the credits, and yeah, you're right. What else?
Yeah, some additional links. That's a very flexible column, but they all have it. So we'll probably put our itch store there, maybe our Kickstarter, something like that.
I mean, all our social
Just
media links should definitely be in the Presskit.
Yeah, all there slapped everywhere. That's great. One thing that I don't see on a lot of press kits again is a monetization permission. Ours reads like this. Go ahead and copy it because, it's pretty generic. Dark Paradigm Games LLC allows for the contents of Legion's Masters to be published through media for any commercial or non-commercial purposes. So the reason that's there is, again, journalists don't have much time. If they want to use content you've included in this press kit, legally, they will probably have to now message you back, ask, can I use this specific picture? And then you'll have to send them this permission. Just avoid that hassle. Make things as easy as possible for them. Put that permission straight in the press kit, because technically they can't use any of it, legally speaking, unless you've given them permission. I know a lot of smaller journalists don't bother getting those permissions. You probably don't mind that much, but actually, it's an important column to have there, especially if you want the interest of bigger journalists.
Yeah, that's a really good point you're making. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Good, you're on my team. No, but...
Good to be here.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, but if you're already having a released game, you also want to put like revenue, funding. You could even go as fancy as state, okay, we have right now this and this amount of followers on our social media that are following this game. And maybe a product guide, and definitely put a list of awards or recognition you got for your game or for your company that makes you seem, more like a serious company, if in case you're not. But
yeah. We've got thousands, millions, uncountable
all the
awards.
Yeah, I had to put them outside, so I still have living space. It's horrible.
Difficulties.
Yeah. Another thing, product samples. For example, if you have a download just for journalists, definitely include it too. Whew, okay, I think I'm done.
Oh, yeah, nice. And a download link for your game. Or if it's a digital product, a link to it. That's important.
Historical milestones, maybe still. Yeah.
Well, now for the formatting is actually quite simple, I think. But Jacky and I agreed. Just make it quite clean.
Yes.
Again, just the facts, Do you have any formatting ideas?
Yeah, there are already a few free Presskit templates out there, but I think it could be nice to have this personal note that also makes journalists want to cover your story and want to use your Presskit. And if your Presskit is kind of annoying to use, then I as a journalist would be like, let's search for Presskit or for a company that's easier to cover. And I think we already both agree, clean layout, and really important is a chronological order of the events that have been happening. It would be so annoying if I go to a Presskit and I would have to, or would want to write an article about it, and then I have to piece everything together and puzzle around. And yeah, maybe another tip for if you put it on your website is to put it in the at the bottom of your website as a link, and just to additionally to distributing it to your press list if you have one. Yeah,
which actually brings us to the next point of how do you distribute it?
Yeah, we already said like there are these two options. You either have the digital digital means of distributing it, or printing it out and sending it to press. What would you say?
I quite liked your USB idea. That's pretty good. Yeah, you've got a budget for USBs then, but I'm sure it can be done.
Yeah, I've never I'm not a journalist, but I wonder how I would feel if a gaming company would come up to me and be like, "Here, this is my press kit, love me." Basically, write an article about this.
Yeah. I think if it was at a conference and somebody gave me like a printed out paper pack, I'd probably look at it. To be honest, there's so little effort involved. Like if you've just been handed it, literally.
Yeah.
So I think for the distribution side of things, you want to get it out to as many people as possible. I was having a good idea earlier that we should probably escalate from lesser known journalists and article writers, because our game isn't that well known. Our studio also isn't that well known. So we'll start with small outlets who probably focus on very indie things and just take pride in finding things that other people haven't heard of.
Yes.
And
like
that way we can gradually...
They are looking for this I found the next big mobile or game hit and I'm so proud and I was the one who discovered it, kind of, right? At least.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think there's an appeal there. So use your underdog status for you. Make it work for you. But the other nice thing about that, exactly, is one of the most convincing sections of a good press kit is your articles, reviews, and feedback section, where you talk about people who have already received your product well. Well, if nobody has received your product yet, that obviously can't be filled in. But if you start off with these smaller outlets, you can actually gradually pad out that section, and then you can approach bigger outlets, and they may be more interested.
Yeah.
You may actually get some feedback to put there from smaller people.
Yeah, I also have to say, the more smaller journalists I write with, hey, do you want to cover a game? Would you be interested? You would get a free alpha key or something. They're actually really happy to get that attention. And I think then they're also more likely to write a review on you if you write them personally. And if you not have like this very template email of, we are company X and we do this, write a review about us, cheers. I think it's really important to make this personal contact.
And that's the last thing I can think of talking about. How do you customize your press kit, or do you customize your press kit? And in my opinion, one of the better ways of going about that might be look up the demographic of the journalist you're messaging. Ideally, get their name, because people respond to it better if you do include their name. And if your game fits their demographic, which is, their reader base, who is this journalist writing for, then specifically make that link. Say, my game is aimed at 18-year-olds, men who are at university. That would be a really weird niche. But or 60-year-olds women who probably don't know how to use their mobile phone well, so it's really simple to play. And I'm just coming up with really niche gamer markets. If that happens to match the journalist's market, though, they're going to think that's perfect. That my entire reader base is 60-year-old women who don't know how to use their mobile phones that well.
6-year-old women? What?
I was saying 60.
Oh, 60. Oh.
I think most 16-year-olds know how to use mobile phones way better than me.
It was already, okay. Brilliant.
So I was just saying, customize it that little bit to make links with the journalist's reader base, perhaps. If you don't have any links with the journalist's reader base, if you've already found the journalist's email, it's probably no harm to send it to them anyway.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't. Well, they'll know if you're just making stuff up. Don't try and say your game's market is 20-year-olds when it's 60-year-olds. Just to get the journalist interesting. So only do this if it's true.
That is a really good statement to maybe also end this podcast with. Or do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm done. That's everything I can think of.
Yeah, I think we've covered all the topics we wanted to talk about today. And thank you so much for joining us. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please join our Discord server and we will keep you posted for our next podcast. Also, I will probably try to make a list of what we covered today and put it on our Twitter account and just share the information. And maybe we can help some other indie devs out with what we learn, and that would be so great. Yeah, so we will put the link in the description for the Discord server. So join us, and we will be here again about this time next month in February 2020. Thank you so much. My name is...
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening. My name is Jacky Martin.